Hey folks, everything new under the sun. We're marching along the timeline of the return of the Lord. Bible prophecy, I believe, is happening right before our eyes. We're in the very last days. You know, this is the finale event. This is the fireworks of 6,000 years of man, of civilization, as we know it before the 7-year period and the millennial reign of Christ. I don't believe the 7-year period has started yet, but I think we're very close. So I've kind of moved things ahead, and I've always said, I don't know the date and time of anything exactly, but I think at this point, 2028 is now too close. And again, it was based on the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. When exactly did that happen? In the year 28 or the year 30? On the Gregorian calendar. And it appears it may be the year 30, so 2,000 years from there would be 2030. So you come off that by 7 years, and you have 2023. Now, that may not be the start of the 7-year period, or maybe we have entered the 7-year period. Maybe we are already experiencing the tribulation seals. I don't know. I think things are going to increase in frequency and intensity, just like birth pains. And we very well may be seeing the soft start, if you will, of what is to come in very, very short order once this starts going down. It's like dominoes. Once they start going down, they speed up, and I think we're gonna see that very shortly. I think this article really sums up the situation. And I've spoken before of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And Ezekiel 38 and 39, you can see the arrow there at the bottom. Third temple, and let me move this up here. I have too many arrows here. Ezekiel 38 and 39, let me put it right there. And this speaks of the war of Gog Magog. And during this time, a country from the north, many would say Russia, and with Russia's leader, march on Israel, and they're coming to take a spoil, to take cattle and goods, gold and silver. And other nations, part of the United Nations, Sheba and Dedan and the young lions of Tarshish, they're saying words. They're saying, why are you marching on Israel? They're saying a bunch of things. And I liken it to saying the things at the UN General Assembly, saying to Russia's ambassador, why are you marching on Israel? Why are you doing these things? But you notice that they're not actually coming to the defense of Israel during that time. And I suggest to you, it's because the United States, who currently is the world superpower, militarily, economically, is not the world superpower or the economic superpower at that point in time when Ezekiel 38 and 39 are fulfilled. Are we reaching a time when they would not back up Israel, either politically or, they just are not able to, maybe economically, maybe they have no money? And I think this article really does sum it up. This is Colonel McGregor, and he is a retired general. This is from War News 247. Colonel McGregor, U.S. is bankrupt, and our ammo has run out. And I think that, like I said, I think that sums it up. Colonel McGregor, he believes the real reason for the withdrawal of the Americans from Afghanistan was that USA had fallen into a state of economic weakness, just as it happened to the British when they withdrew from India. He says the Ukrainians are going to be crushed effectively. So he's a political scientist, a military man, a former U.S. Army colonel, and he has taken a highly critical stance on the Ukraine war. He says the Ukrainians will be crushed. Even the Washington Post and the New York Times are finally starting to write the truth. The losses are terrible. We watched as the Russians basically destroyed 3 separate armies that had been created by the Ukrainians. And remember, the Ukraine had pretty much the largest army in Europe, as I understand it. So significant army going up against the Russians. Don't be mistaken. The Russians are losing a lot of people as well, but they have more firepower, more ammunition. They were ready for this war. Meanwhile, the West wasn't, because the West didn't think it was going to happen. The losses are terrible. We watched as the Russians basically destroyed 3 separate armies, Everyone is now starting to wonder what's really going on. The truth is coming out, he says, which is that this war was not started by Russia. Look at that. Colonel McGregor says the war was not started by Russia. Now, I hope you and I knew that. I knew that. It was because NATO continued to push and press against Russia's borders and the buffer zone, which Ukraine, the country of Ukraine, basically was between Russia and NATO. Russia asked us not to push Ukraine into NATO, and what were they doing? They were seeking NATO, seeking to get into the NATO Union. We ignored Russia, and Russia had already made it clear that they would defend its national interests. All they wanted to do is all they wanted was a neutral status for Ukraine. and here's the crux of the matter. When asked how the U.S. would go about waging war against Russia and possibly China at the same time, McGregor said, "This is not possible. Period. It cannot be done against Russia. Period. We are on the road to bankruptcy. Period. The American people feel this. Period. There won't be a bailout bank like there used to be. Period. The last thing Americans need right now is a war. No more this political and military incompetence, corruption," he says. "I am concerned that we might actually provoke a direct confrontation with the Russians. We have already seen the Russians are ready to fight. They have already carried out partial recruitment. So the Russians have been getting for war. They're recruiting. They've already militarized their companies where they're making ammunition and war machine. Their country is in a state of war now. It's a war economy where basically the government has commandeered control of any and all manufacturing facilities to make things for war. Meanwhile, what are we doing in the West? We're not doing anything yet. The Western nations haven't realized that we're in a war and that we likely need to ramp up ammunition supplies. So he says, and I'll end with this: the left destroyed the U.S. forces. So the whole LGBTQ thing, the wokeness in the U.S. forces, it's just a joke now, and no one wants to join. Recruitment rates are way down. No one wants to join the U.S. Army. Who are we kidding? So the left destroyed U.S. forces. The stocks of ammunition and equipment we have accumulated over the years have been depleted, and those stocks were of old and aging ammunition anyways. So they've given them all to Ukraine. They've all been used. Even though we have never gone to war, this is madness, he says. So the West isn't creating new ammo at the pace that Russia and China are. The West used up all their ammo. The West is in economic collapse now as we see the bank runs happening. Check CNBC, look at the various banks. There's up and down spikes on the markets, but ultimately people are still, there's a slow run. There's a hidden digital run on the banks right now. It's not like in 1929 where people stood in lines outside banks. This is happening digitally now. We, the U.S., created the conflict, the war in Ukraine. I believe that. I believe they poked the bear enough to where Russia said, "That's it. We gotta get Ukraine. This has got to be a buffer." I certainly believe the U.S. had no part in trying to prevent this. They did not want peace. They didn't try earnestly to come up with a solution for Russia's security needs and concerns. And you'll hear Trump, he suggested the same sort of ideas that, Russia wanted security guarantees. And U.S. was nowhere to be found to really try and honestly help or come to some agreement with Russia. Likewise, there's no interest in peace right now. U.S. doesn't want peace. Russia is talking about peace. China is talking about peace. But the U.S. has said no ceasefire. The U.S. is not agreeing to any ceasefire. It's incredible. Even Zelensky is talking about peace, and the U.S. is not talking about peace. Have you heard that in your mainstream media? Biden does not care about peace. The war machine does not care about peace. They're going to drive the Ukrainians into the ground. They're effectively going to kill them all. And the U.S. war machine is making money hand over foot, selling propane ammunition, natural gas to Europe because they, of course, are not getting Russian supplies of gas. And U.S. is going absolutely downhill. So when you talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39 in the timeline of the return of the Lord, I mean, it could happen now. There's no interest in the U.S. to back up Israel. So if anybody wanted to march in Israel, if Israel decides to take out Iran and take out Damascus in Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus, Russia has security agreements with Iran because Iran is providing Russia with drones and military equipment. So what Russia would do is, give us this and we'll back you up militarily. They're already in Syria. Currently, they're just letting Israel do what they need to do in Syria, but there will come a time, the whole idea of the hook in the jaw, when the red line will be crossed, Iran will say, please come back us up, and Russia will march into Israel and attempt to take them out. And at that time, Ezekiel 38 and 39 doesn't really mention the United States, the one world military and economic superpower, that has been for the last 70 years or whatever it is since World War II, effectively, the de facto world policeman. They are not coming to Israel's aid at this time, and they're not intervening in Middle East conflicts, apparently, at that time. So where are they? They've collapsed. They've been destroyed. There's no political will, and there is no economic ability. And it may not be that they are nuked or anything. It could just be that they're in absolute poverty, absolute hyperinflation, economic collapse, where even though we may all still be here, we may not be killed, due to World War III or something, but there is a complete inability and a non-interest to act at that point in time. So Bible prophecy, again, it does not, to me, there's no indication that the United States is there in any strong force. In terms of the idea of the eagle being there, and carrying the Jews away and this sort of thing, I just don't see it. All I see, the only maybe a slight reference, is Young Lions of Tarshish, where they're simply saying a bunch of words, but for whatever reason, again, politically, there's no will, or they simply can't financially, or they don't have the hardware to do it. They're simply not backing up Israel, which, again, it tells me that they've lost their superpower status in the last days. Are we close to it? Yeah, we are. Because what happens when countries start going down economically? They go to war. And are we in war? We absolutely are. And so this is an existential threat for Russia and for NATO and for the United States. And I think the United States loses. I think that's what history is going to show. I think that's what Bible prophecy shows. I don't see any other Western nation really declared there having any big part in end-time Bible prophecy. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video.